obstructionists. They won't vote. They're total obstructionists. They don't want to vote. Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer. They want to use the issue, and I like the issue for election, too. Our issue is strong borders, no crime. Their issue is open borders. Let MS-13 all over our country. That's what's going to happen if you listen to them.
Welcome back as we continue our special edition of AM Joy live from Tornillo, Texas. Well, one thing has become abundantly clear. Donald Trump sees his hardline immigration stance as a political winner and potential turnout driver for Republican voters in November. According to the Associated Press, quote, several White House aides, led by advisor Stephen Miller, have encouraged the president to make immigration a defining issue for the midterms. And Trump has told advisors that he believes he looks strong on the matter, suggesting that it could be a winning culture war issue, much like his attacks on NFL players who take a knee for the national anthem to protest police brutality. And joining me now is Michael Bennett, defensive end for the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles, and author of Things That Make White People Uncomfortable. Michael, thank you so much for being here. And I want to start out by asking you about that Donald Trump convergence, where he believes that these issues, where he attacks players like NFL players who take a knee for the national anthem, these sort of racial culture war issues are good for him and make him seem strong. What do you make of that?
I don't think it makes him seem strong. I think we're just trying to bring up issues that are happening to all Americans and want to be able to create those voices for those people. And I think he's missing the message when really it's just a connection between all America. America is made up of immigrants. America is made up of a whole bunch of people from diverse backgrounds, different religions, different genders. And I think it's important that we don't forget that. And I think sometimes we get lost in picking a side, you know, Democrat, Republican. And at the end of the day, we're just trying to choose human.
And you know, the issue of police violence, we just had yet another police-involved shooting that is making the rounds in the hashtag Black Lives Matter, unfortunately. And so people are still thinking about this issue as well as the issue that is behind me and deportations and the caging of children. I want to read a little bit from your book. And this is what you wrote. And this was what you were thinking about in the first preseason game of 2017 before the national anthem began to play. And you wrote this: I was thinking about my mom, a teacher for over 20 years, who taught me to question everything. I was thinking about the gap between what we are taught the flag represents and the lived experience of too many people. I was thinking about all of this, and as the anthem started to play, I sat down. There was no way I could stand for the national anthem, and there was no way I would until I saw this country take steps toward common decency. You know, we're in this moment where Americans are confronting the fact that we have interned our own citizens before, that we've taken children from their parents before, that police brutality obviously has gone on for centuries. How do you approach that as an issue in terms of, you said you want this country to achieve common decency, but you see what's happening behind me and it feels like we're sometimes sliding backwards?
I mean, it's so hard to deal with. I think at the end of the day, like, we always choosing sides, but we never choose, you know, the human being aspect of it. I think people are being dehumanized and nobody's really talking about the value of the human. And I think the experiences that we forget, we don't have empathy and compassion for other people. And I think my book is about having that empathy and compassion for other cultures and other people, and then trying to understand and just listen. I think we try to choose and we talk, we never ever listen. And I think if you look at what's happening now, people are just talking. Nobody really cares what's happening to the families that are being, you know, pulled apart. Nobody cares about that. You're just worried about their kids. And I think we can't have common decency until we start worried about the other people around us, because we all make up America. You know, people choose which America that they love, but the reality, this is the America that we live in. You know, people are being, you know, deported, families are being broken apart. You know, this is what people don't have fresh water. You know, there's Native American issues, there's border issues, brown people, police brutality, you know, women equality, Me Too. These are all the issues that make up America, and we just can't choose the ones we love. We got to be able to choose America for what it really is and choose our part in how we make a change in it.
Yeah. Donald Trump challenged players to tell him who he thinks to be pardoned. A group of NFL players answered him, okay, here's who you should pardon. A handful of pardons will not address the systemic injustice that NFL players have been protesting. The players wrote, these are problems that our government has created, many of which occur at the local level. If Trump thinks he can end these injustices, we deliver him a few names. He has been listening to us. Michael, if you were invited, would you go to the White House to talk to Donald Trump?
I think we should be able to have dialogue. I think not being able to have dialogue is a big issue right now. And if we can have dialogue with him and figure out how we can make America great again, I mean, that's what he wants to make America great again. But then everybody doesn't have a voice, and we need to be able to bridge that gap and have those voices again. And I don't know if he's really willing to listen, but if he really wanted to listen and find out how we can, talk about police brutality and hear our story, I wouldn't be against that. You know what I mean? But if he's not going to listen and just going to keep dividing us, then I wouldn't go. But if he's going to be able to have the opportunity to talk about these issues and talk about the realities of what's really happening in America right now, I'd be down to do that.
Michael Bennett, Super Bowl champion Michael Bennett, thank you very much, and congratulations on the new book. Everyone should definitely give it a read, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And coming up, more AM Joy live from Tornillo, Texas.
They want to use the issue, and I like the issue for election too. Our issue is strong borders, no crime. Their issue is open borders. Let MS-13 all over our country. That's what's going to happen if you listen to them.
Welcome back to a special edition of AM Joy. We are bringing you 2 more hours of live coverage from Tornillo, Texas, where hundreds are expected to gather. People are already gathering behind me to demand justice for immigrant children who remain in limbo after being separated from their parents. It's just one of the many rallies pushing back on the deeply unpopular, shocking, quite frankly, immigration policies of Donald Trump. On Saturday, the Department of Homeland Security released a fact sheet saying that of the more than 2,000 kids in custody, 522 of them, they say, have been reunited with their parents. The agency also says that 83% of these children in custody arrived in the U.S. unaccompanied by a parent. Now, it's still unclear when more families will be reunited, but DHS says the process typically begins shortly after parents go through their court proceedings. Joining me now is director and activist Rob Reiner, one of the many public figures voicing opposition to the Trump administration, and his wife, Michelle Reiner, producer of Shock and Awe. Thank you very much, both of you, for coming down.
Thanks for having us.
So let's first talk about what the government is saying. Because one of the things, I was talking yesterday with Lawrence O'Donnell on the show, and he made a really good point that, at this point, these are their claims.
Yeah.
But it's very complicated to just accept it at face value.
Yeah, but the truth of the matter is there is no crisis except for the one that Donald Trump created.
Yeah.
There is no crisis here. But he created one, and clearly all he's interested in at this point, let's cut to the chase. This is about racism. This is pure and simple racism. That's all this is. He's hoping that the people who support him will be ginned up and running to the polls to make sure that brown people don't come into America. That's exactly what's going on here. And and in the process, he's destroying families.
Yeah. I mean, at minimum, Michelle, it seems that the Trump administration, the political people on his team, believe that the base of the Republican Party will be more moved by separating brown children and parents than they will, for instance, by his tax cut. Because that's not what they're selling. They're telling him, no, this is the issue that makes you look strong.
Because I hate to repeat what he just said, but this is based on racism, period, as they like to say. That's all this is. They don't want more brown people coming into this country and taking their jobs. Immigration is lower than it's ever been. There's no crisis at the border, and it's just an inhumane, unconscionable act that they did by separating children. And I have to tell you, my mother was in Auschwitz. She got separated from her entire family, lost her entire family. I never thought I would live to see something like that, particularly in this country, ever again in my lifetime.
Yeah.
It's hideous. And by the way, as a fellow Jew, I'd like to hear Ivanka speak up. Where is Ivanka? Not just where are the girls, where is Ivanka? Her mission is women and children. She's here to help them, as well as Melania, supposedly. Where are they? Why aren't they out there speaking out and screaming about this and becoming the face of reorganizing and, getting the kids and the parents together again? Where are they? Where is she?
Yeah. And the next thing that we're talking about, Rob, is indefinite family detention. Yeah. So not letting the children out of the cages, but just putting the families in with them.
Yeah, no, this is This is inhuman. What we're doing in the United States of America is inhuman. And you mentioned it a second ago. He launched his campaign basically saying Mexicans are rapists, they're murderers. That's what he's still selling. It's the only thing he can sell to that racist base of his. And that's what he's been doing. He started his political career on saying Obama was not a legitimate president. This is all a reaction. The people who support him are frightened to death of this country becoming the Browning of America. It's about immigration. It's about people coming together. We've been doing this for hundreds of years. It helps the country. It makes the country stronger. We need immigrants to help boost our economy, and everybody knows that. Yeah. This is xenophobia, pure and simple.
And crime is lower where there's groups of... So everything that he's been saying is a lie. He lies about everything, and his base agrees with him. Yeah. And Fox propagates it, and then that's it. Then you got 40% of the people who just believe that.
And we're here in El Paso, which is one of the safest cities in America.
Yes.
I mean, Mexico is literally right there. You can see it from here. You can walk over to it. You know, Michelle, you talked about your family's experiences, and you know, there is the Godwin's law, which, by the way, Godwin himself suspended for Donald Trump, which says that you know, when you make the analogy to the 1930s Germany, you go too far. But there are a lot of people who are talking about the fact that it didn't begin with the violence against Jewish people. It began with the rhetoric about people being vermin, about people infesting the country, about people being criminals. And that rhetoric is pretty consistent. Yeah. And that is one of the things I think that's destabilizing and really frightening a lot of people.
They follow the exact pattern that Hitler has. I hate to say it, with the propaganda, even down to the Red Cross went into Auschwitz. They cleaned it up for 2 days. It looked fine. They went back. They said everything seems fine there. Yeah. You know, and
it's a fascist playbook.
Same thing that when Melania did that ridiculous trip in that ridiculous shirt and went down there.
Yeah, I don't care who. What do you make of the fact? You know, Rob, I go back a lot to All in the Family. I feel like it's one of those cultural touchstones because it really captured a moment in U.S. history when this anxiety about social change, about demographic change, was really captured in a really brilliant way. Although Archie had this humanity to him, right? But he did have that fear.
Yes, he was definitely frightened. The man was a bigot. Yeah. He was a racist. But, and we made fun of it. Yeah. We attacked him for it. And then it seemed that we were moving in a good direction. You know, we've seen great actors, you know, in Oprah, and we had Barack Obama become president. We seemed like we were going in a good direction. But what we didn't understand is obviously racism has been here forever, but it was kind of tamped down a little bit. And then along comes Donald Trump, and he gives it voice, and he brings it right back to the surface. And it's shocking that there are 40%, as you say, or 46%. Yeah. Those people who are supporting what he's doing here are racist, period.
It's distressing.
You know, to quote Sean Spicer.
When you look at the polling, 55% of Americans, only 55% disagree with the policy of separating children from their parents when they cross the border unlawfully. 27% agree with it. But when you break it down by party, 14% of Democrats, not sure what that's about, agree with it. 46% of Republicans are for it, only 32% are against it, and 56% of independents are against it, 29% are for it. You still have, it's not a majority, it's not over 50% of Republicans, but it's more Republicans are for it than are not. Yeah, is that just partisanship? Is that just whatever Trump wants?
No, it's more than partisanship, because that 46% represents 25% of the country. Yeah. And 25% of the country, whether it's 25, 20, 30%, are hardcore racist. They do not want to see brown people coming into America. That's just what's going on here. I mean, think about this. Immigrants are less likely to commit crimes than people who live here. People who are striving so hard to get to this country want a better life. They're not here to commit crimes. That's not saying that there isn't crime and that there isn't drug running. Of course there is. But that is way down from where it was. We saw 1,600,000 people coming in. Last year we saw 300,000. Yeah. It is way down. So this is a crisis. This one particularly is one that Donald Trump created.
Yeah, the movie that he produced is called Shock and Awe, and that is another phrase that's been ringing in my head a lot, Michelle, because it feels like what the Trump administration does is that they just do a lot. They do a lot all at once. They're reorganizing the federal government and putting the Department of Education inside the Department of Labor, and they're, you know, talking about denaturalizing immigrants and this and the detention, and it all happened so quickly. I wonder how people can even stop to process it all, let alone deal with it.
Well, they bring up these things, like these made-up crises, to obfuscate what's really going on. I know I read this article last night. It's astounding what they're breaking apart and you know, putting into the private sector. It's just really scary what this government's doing. And because of all this, you know, hoopla, don't look over there, we're doing this here, you know, people aren't noticing. And it's really, really scary. And it's also every single thing that Obama did. He has dismantled every single thing. And it's, don't tell me that's not racist.
Well, today, the Obama administration protection for our oceans, keeping them from being polluted, that's been reversed now because we don't need that.
No,
and there's a huge sort of, not a huge, there's a sector of the American public that says, oh, you Hollywood people, Hollywood's getting involved again. Why is Hollywood talking again? But the arts have really been standing up against Donald Trump, really firmly against him. What's the balance on how much that helps, how much that doesn't help? What do you think?
I think it helps if you understand the issues and you can speak intelligently about them. I think it doesn't help when you say F Trump. That kind of stuff doesn't help. But if you understand what's going on and you can put it in context, we have a president who does not understand the nexus between politics, policy, and government and how that all works. So he just throws something out that he knows his base will lap up, but he doesn't know how that's going to ultimately be implemented and how it's going to play out. And so he winds up with this insane policy.
And I think at the end of the day, I think what a lot of people ask is, what do we do? People feel a bit helpless. Other than marching, and that's important, and showing sort of visible opposition, do you get that question a lot from friends saying, tell us what to do?
What you do is you mobilize, you make sure that you get your vote out, you get them registered, because right now there's no check on this president coming from our Congress. In order to make that happen, we have to take back the House and the Senate to put a check on this a guy who has absolutely no clue as to how anything works.
Does it surprise you that more Republicans aren't speaking out? It's been pretty quiet on that side.
It's absolutely shocking. They're spineless. I mean, if they're only concerned about the re-election, it's a pretty pathetic, you know, use of their time. And that seems to be what they're doing, because they have absolutely no backbone and you know, Paul Ryan, how would you feel if your baby was taken away from you? I'd like to know how all these people would feel if it was their babies. I want them to listen to those tapes, those 6-minute tapes of the babies crying or the mothers screaming for their kids. It's unconscionable. It's just unconscionable.
Marsha Blackburn trying to stop Congressman Liu from playing that audio. And
that was insane.
You're going to speak today. What are you going to say?
Well, I'm gonna say what I've been saying, which is we need to get this man out of there. This man is poisonous to our democracy. We're right now at a point where democracy is hanging by a thread. I mean, right now the courts are holding, and right now the press, a big chunk of the press is doing their job, but there's a big chunk of the press that is fighting back and pushing another narrative, and it's hard to break through to those people. So I'm going to talk about what we need to do to save 241 years of self-rule. It's being tested right now. We're being tested.
To quote that new book that just came out, he is evil. He is evil. And the thing is, I thought, oh, he'll come in and he won't really know because he's not that smart. He doesn't, you know, he'll just do a showmanship thing. But he's evil. And how he's treating people and dismantling everything to help anybody else in this country except for the top 1%, of which he claims to not be. It's you know, that's the joke of it all. But he's not a good man.
Are you more worried or more hopeful today?
Worried.
I'm worried, but I'm also hopeful. I'm really hopeful worried. because you know what? I do believe in the decency of human beings.
But they haven't done anything about the cyber attacks. They haven't done anything to change what happened in 2016. The same bots, the same things are going on that went on then. What's changed? What's to stop Russia from taking over this election in 2018?
What's changed, in my opinion, is that Donald Trump is in the White House. And that will hopefully energize us to the point where we will overcome gerrymandering, will overcome Russian interference, will overcome essentially state-run media, and overwhelm it enough so that we can do what we need to do in this country.
Well, Rob and Michelle Reiner, I think you give a lot of people hope. You guys are voicing, I think, a lot of people's fears, a lot of people's hopes as well, and you guys do that brilliantly. We'll be looking forward to hearing what you have to say. We'll be broadcasting here. You're going to be a part of that crowd of that event.
Let's hear from Ivanka and Melania. Get these kids back with their parents now.
I think you have gotten the message to you. It'll be interesting to see if they respond.
Yeah.
Shall see.
Hopefully without message jackets. But we don't think message jackets are helpful. All right, coming up more AM Joy live from Tornillo, Texas. Thank you so much. Well done. Welcome back to our special edition of AM Joy. We're live in Tornillo, Texas, where a Voto Latino rally to end family detention is currently underway. You can hear it behind me. But this is just one of the many rallies that will take place all over the country in the coming days. Congressman Jimmy Gomez from California is with us to discuss congressional efforts to end this crisis. And Paula Mendoza, organizer of the 2017 Women's March, is also here to talk mobilization efforts across the country. Thank you both for being here. I normally would go ladies first, but I want to go to the congressman first, because the feeling of crisis that every single person that I talk to, that I'm sure you talk to, has is on 10.
Yeah.
And yet, in a normal crisis, there would be immediate congressional hearings. Congress would be hopping to it. Where is the Congress?
You know, the Republicans are flat-footed. They're actually complicit with this president because they're afraid that if they go against them, that they're going to lose re-election. And they need to get a spine and make sure they speak up, because it's not just about the kids that are being held hostage by this president, but also what it means to be an American and this country as a whole.
You know, and with all due respect to the importance of elected officials, I actually respect the work that elected officials do. I think people who do what you do don't get enough respect for the sacrifices it takes to do the job. But there's also such a thing as your soul, right? Of your worrying about re-election versus worrying about your immortal soul, worrying about your conscience. The idea that a little kid could be dragged when you lose your child in the supermarket for 5 minutes, you freak out. We all remember that moment where your child hides among the coat racks, like my middle son used to love to do, and you freak out. The idea that you could watch people being torn apart from a child and think, my re-election is more important to me than doing something about it. I find that shocking. Do behind the scenes Republicans say to you, I get that this is a moral outrage?
Actually, I haven't heard one of them say that.
What?
I haven't heard one Republican say that. I've heard Republicans that are not elected officials say that.
Right.
Sure.
Absolutely.
And I think there's a lot of deep empathy of Republicans across the country and independents and Democrats.
Sure, absolutely.
But
absolutely.
I haven't heard that from one single member of Congress. Well, I did hear one who called on Stephen Miller to resign, to be fired, and I called on the same thing because he's really leading this anti-immigrant effort in the White House.
Well, he and the President of the United States. Paula, we just had this morning Donald Trump, and I've stopped reading his tweets, to be blunt, on the air, so I don't normally do this anymore. But he tweeted this morning that in his view, and these are presidential official statements because they come from his official Twitter account, that when someone comes in, he says, we must immediately, with no judges, no court cases, weird capitalizations there, bring them back from where they came. Our system is a mockery, good immigration, blah, 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 blah. Basically saying there shouldn't even be a judicial process. People should just be summarily returned.
I mean, what we have to accept as an American people is that we are living under a fascist state. And we have to start functioning as the press. What is the press doing? And I think that the press needs to look and study press in fascist countries and how they have been successful. How do artists organize and work under a fascist state? And the American people, what are we going to do? Because we still are at a point, at a crossroads, where we can turn this around, where we still hold the power, but that power very clearly is slipping from our hands. And what are we going to do? I think today marks a week of massive protests, of civil disobedience, of demonstrations, of people's moral outrage coming to a tipping point. And to show this government, to show the Republicans that lack a moral courage, that lack a moral compass, that we will not be silent, that we will not allow this to happen under our watch, that children will not be separated from their parents for months, for years on end, with no route to
or
go
permanently.
back home. Yes.
Paula, we're talking this morning about the potential that some of these parents, first of all, many of them pleaded guilty in mass hearings, where they pleaded guilty to the misdemeanor of crossing the border without documents, and have already, in many cases, been sent back to their home countries without their children.
Yes.
So in some cases, we're talking about the potential for permanent separation.
Yes, and then what happens when they are permanently separated? They're in a foster care system. They're going, and we know that the foster care system in this country can be abhorrent to children. They will be adopted by strangers. They will be the lost children of this country. Donald Trump announced, or I read in an article today, that he has announced his task force for the reunification of unaccompanied minors. We must be very clear. These children were not and are not unaccompanied minors. They were stolen from their children, from their parents. They are the stolen children of America, and that's what we need to refer to them as, and we cannot let Donald Trump spin this as if they are unaccompanied minors.
And Congressman, we've seen instances where members of Congress have attempted to gain access. United States senators and members of the United States Congress have, and members of the House, such as yourself, have tried to gain access to these facilities, which are federal facilities, even if they're privately run. How can it be that the people elected by the citizens of this country cannot gain access to a facility being run in the name of the people of this country?
You know, this administration has run roughshod over the Constitution time and time again, the idea of separation of powers, of equal branches of government. And this Congress has to step up. And that's why I even challenged Chairman Gowdy in oversight, even the Tea Party leader, Mark Meadows. I said, if you guys care about this country, Congress has to play its check and balance on this administration.
What do they say to you when you tell them that?
They have a different idea what that means. They believe it's holding like this deep state accountable, which is just complete nonsense, right? So, but we have introduced amendments. There's an amendment that was accepted and passed in an appropriations bill that would prohibit ICE and Border Patrol from prohibiting any member of Congress from accessing these facilities. So we're going to introduce that amendment and every different must-pass bill till it gets passed so that we have direct access, not 2 weeks away, not 6 days away, but whenever we show up, we should have access to those facilities.
Yeah, this is the thing that keeps me up at night. The images that we have seen are the images that have been leaked by the American government, which are the bland, the easy images, the kinder images. So what is really happening there has yet to be seen by the American people. And when that happens, I feel the moral outrage will continue, but we need to have our congressmen and women and senators demanding and pushing and gaining access and then showing us what it looks like.
And Paula, I have to ask you as an organizer, how do you bring into the process some Americans who have mixed status families? And by the way, this is not just Latino families. I'm West Indian. There are West Indian people who have the same issue. There are people who are of African descent who come from the continent who have the same issue. There are undocumented people of all races and ethnicities. They are not all Latino, and they're not all from Mexico or from Central America. But when mixed status families may have a fear of becoming involved in this kind of activism, or even stepping forward to foster their own relatives because they're afraid that they'll expose those who are undocumented in their own families, how can these mixed status families be brought into the process?
It's a very difficult conversation to have because you are literally exposing families to be separated. We're ultimately talking about family separation, just not being locked in jails with your parents. So what we're asking for is for allies to step in, for those that actually have papers and can at this moment say something, to go out to the streets. There's a march on June 30th. Together, Families Belong Together, which will be massive. Go out to that. Vote. Obviously, we are looking to young people, to Latinos, to go out and vote. Over 11 million Latinos that were eligible to vote did not vote in 2016.
This state is majority minority.
Yes. Go out and vote. Yeah. And that makes a difference.
And Congressman, lastly, there's a lot of people who are throwing out the solution of just giving Trump what he wants, giving him the wall, giving him reductions to family immigration and family reunification. Is there any circumstance under which Democrats will or should give in on those fundamental issues?
You know, I believe in the saying, you don't negotiate with legislative terrorists. And that's what he is. That's what the Republicans, they're holding these kids hostage in order to get their legislative means. You know, just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it. There are certain bounds that we should understand. And these people are legislative terrorists. And that's not a term I use. That is a term that a former Republican speaker has used.
Yeah. Well, we are going to, first of all, thank you both for for what you're doing. Are you both speaking at this rally? Okay, so we will look for that. Right now, behind me, just for our viewers who are watching, I believe that this is Joaquin Castro is speaking right now. We're going to listen to a little bit of that as we thank Congressman Jimmy Gomez and Paula Mendoza. Thank you both for your activism. Thank you for being here. We will keep up with what you guys are doing as well. Thank you so much. More AM Joy coming up. Right now, let's take a listen to Congressman Julian Castro.
From their parents. And whether it was the Muslim travel ban or the failure in Puerto Rico or this on family separations, the problem is that this president and his administration, they use cruelty as a hobby. Incompetence is their standard operating procedure. Division is their tool. And we cannot leave it to chance. We need to verify that these children are being reunited with their parents. So...
We remember in November, we will show up and we will not forget one child. And we will win. We will not take that. The only fight you.
All right, welcome back to our special live coverage from Tornillo, Texas, where right now you can hear the speeches going on behind me. People are protesting the Trump administration's policy of separating families and scattering children literally around the country in an estimated 100 shelters in 17 different states. And joining me now is legendary labor leader and civil rights icon Dolores Huerta. Thank you so much for being here. And, you know, when people heard President Barack Obama say, yes, we can, si se puede, which is the original version of that, that sense of hope was so palpable.
Exactly.
Si se puede. Yes, we can. Yes, we can. That sense of hope. It feels like that is completely been flipped on its head. People's shock, and I'm sure you're hearing it too, that we have gone from si se puede to internment camps for children. Are you as shocked as I am, or is this what the cycle of activism is about?
Well, I think that this surpasses anything that we've ever seen before. When we see that the cruelty that is behind the separation of these families, the detention of these family people that are seeking asylum, running from terror and death, to come here with the hope that they will be saved, that their children will be saved, that they will be saved, and that yet they end up in prison, basically. And no, this is really bad. But I think the one thing that we can say that the people that are here in this rally today, all over the border, all these different areas, they still have this by the spirit. There's still hope out there. But the hope has to be with us, the citizens of the United States of America, and we've all kind of come together and to protest what the president is doing.
And the anxiety that people have around immigration is generally focused on farm workers, right? It's focused on the very people who make sure we don't have $15 a head lettuce, right? So there's a fixation on them, and there is a belief, a false belief, that there is a one-to-one trade-off, that the steel worker who's losing their job in Pittsburgh is being victimized by the undocumented migrant in California who is picking lettuce. Why do you suppose people have developed that kind of one-to-one zero-sum game idea?
Well, I really believe that it's a lack of education, it's ignorance, because people don't understand all of this comes together. They don't realize that the immigrants in this country, from day one that this country was built, are the ones that built the country, basically. Yeah. We're talking about Indian slave, African slave, people from Mexico and Asia. All these people that came here to build our country, they don't understand that, and immigrants continue to do the very difficult work that needs to be done in our United States of America. They add to the economy, they add to the country, they don't take away.
Yeah, and besides that, because this is a sort of separate compartmentalized issue, because now we're not even talking about undocumented immigrants who are coming in as farm labor. We're talking about people fleeing violence in the Northern Triangle in Central America and who are seeking asylum. Are you surprised that this same anti-immigrant sentiment has now been placed onto asylum seekers?
I think that is sinful, what is going on right now. And I think the other thing, Joy, is that somehow we have a very short memory, because we don't remember the wars that the United States was promoting in Central America that created a lot of the situations situations that people are now running away from.
Yeah.
And many of these young gang members will be deported. Instead of rehabilitating them here in the United States, we deported them. And then we create these terror situations that exist now in places like El Salvador.
Not to mention our drug policies, which is what these gangs, the Sinaloa cartel and the cartels on the other side of that border, it's American drug customers for illegal drugs that they're fighting over.
Exactly. So I think we have to take a lot of responsibility. We are the richest country in the world. We have so much capacity some of these countries don't have. And instead of saying, okay, let's get together and try to solve some of the situations so that people don't have to leave their homes in terror to come here to the United States, we're not doing that.
And so as somebody who spent a lifetime in activism and as an activist, give people some advice, because people do ask this question, what do we do? What do we do? I've been voting in November to change, who's running Washington. What can people do? What should people do?
Well, one of the things that people can do, by the way, I'm going to be meeting with Carrie Kennedy, Robert Kennedy's daughter today, who yesterday started a fast.
Yes, she was talking about it earlier.
And she's going to pass that fast on to me today.
Okay.
And we're going to be asking people all over the country to join Carrie Kennedy. And she's asking people to fast for 1 day for 24 hours. And in 24 hours is like 1 day for the 2,400 children that are right now missing in action, you might say, in the United States, that are separated from their parents. And so that's one thing we can do. But the other thing that we can do is, call our Congress people.
Yeah.
It's like Michael Moore says, when you get up in the morning, you have to wash your face, brush your teeth, and call your congressperson. And insist that number one, that they do something that the president is not doing. Number one, fix the DACA problem, make sure we get that passed in order to help those young people, to protect them. And then do something about the situation that we have with people that are refugees seeking asylum in the United States, to give them the protection that they need.
Dolores Huerta, I'm told you have to go because you have to be on that stage speaking. So I'm going to let you go, and thank you so much for being here. God bless you. It's wonderful to meet you. Thank you very much.
And I have a little shoe here that one of the farmer women in South Texas who live she crocheted this as a symbol of all of the babies that have been separated from their parents. And thank you very much, Joy and MSNBC.
Thank you, Dolores. Dolores Huerta. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you.
Great, Dolores Huerta. I really appreciate you being here. More Am Joy special coverage live from the border from Tornillo, Texas. Thank you.
Por la justicia, Señor, y en esta hora estamos peleando, Señor, por la justicia de nuestras familias.
Welcome back to our special live coverage from Tornillo, Texas, where right now people are protesting the Trump administration's zero tolerance policy, which is separating families at the U.S.-Mexico border and has been since early May. Joining me now from Homestead is MSNBC correspondent Mariana Atencio. And Mariana, I have to start by asking you about these mass hearings where people are being asked to plead guilty to the misdemeanor of crossing the border without documents, and what you know about those hearings, what is that process, and then what happens to the people who plead guilty?
Joy, good morning to you. I have been inside that federal courtroom in McAllen, Texas. There are 3 buses that head there every day, very early in the morning, with migrants who've crossed the border as recently as that very same week, just a couple of days before they crossed the border, and that is a misdemeanor, but they're brought inside that courtroom in shackles. It is extremely humiliating to witness shackles in their feet and in their hands. They tell me, the lawyers do, because I wasn't allowed as a journalist inside the courtroom to speak to any of these migrants. The lawyers tell me they only get to meet them just an hour before, if at all, to tell them what their rights are. And they were advised to sit in that courtroom where the judge is explaining everything to them in English. They were advised to plead guilty so that they can be, if they were separated from their kids, reunited with their children, and the proceeding can get underway. It is a courtroom that it has 2 sessions, a morning and an afternoon session. In the morning session, when I was there were more than 70 people there. And the time that it took the judge to determine whether that person was guilty, in every case, it was an average of about a minute. Basically, you would be asked to stand up, plead guilty, and then be on your way. Those people were being given time served for the most part if they weren't repeat offenders. So if they hadn't attempted to cross the border before, if they had no criminal record in the United States, they were given time served, put in jail, and then being sent back to their country for their deportation. When I was there, out of the, I believe, more than 100 cases, at least more than 30 were cases of people who had been separated from their children. And oftentimes they weren't even given the chance to tell the judge what made them come to the United States or ask or inquire about their kids. So that is the zero tolerance policy at work. It is people brought into courtrooms and being prosecuted for this misdemeanor that is crossing the border, many of whom come here, as we've been discussing on your show, seeking a better life for their children and their families. Joy?
And Mariana, there's another extraordinary piece of information that we have that I know that you've got some tape to show us on. The idea that the parents are now frantically looking for their kids. And I've likened this to if you lost your child in the mall and you went to the mall security desperately looking for your child and were told they don't open on weekends. Apparently DHS, they don't open on weekends. And so the parents, ICE is telling them that they are not available to help them locate their children on Saturdays and Sunday, that they must come back Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Can you please explain this one?
That is something we found out yesterday as Democratic lawmakers, for the first time, were allowed to tour this facility in Homestead, the second largest migrant shelter in the country. When they went in there and they asked, where are the people working on reunifying these kids with their parents, they were told that that unit doesn't work the weekends.
We must never stop.
DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, does not have staff working on the weekends so that we have a diligent, effective, aggressive policy in place to reunify these kids. What do? We just take the weekend off?
So if you're a concerned parent, Joy, and you have been detained and you're in another state, or you have been deported and you're in another country and you're frantically looking for your child, DHS has sent the following fact sheet last night that I'm going to read to you. ICE has posted information in all of its facilities advising detained parents who are trying to locate and or communicate with a child in the custody of HHS to call the detention reporting and information line for assistance, which is staffed by live operators Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And then finally, I want to show a sheet to you, to our audience. This is read to the kids inside this facility upon arrival. It is in Spanish. It says, "Nosotros estamos muy felices por recibirlos. We are very happy to welcome you y asistirlos en el proceso para reunificarlos and assist you in the process of reunification with your family members in this country." Incredibly shocking to find out that this that is being read to the children does not include Saturdays and Sundays. Out of the 70 children separated in there. Go ahead, Joy.
No. I'm sorry. I'm shocked. I'm reacting in shock. I really didn't even have a comment. But before I run out, you finish your sentence, Mariana. Of the 70 children.
Just to put this in perspective, out of the 70 children separated in there, we know a lot of them are girls. We're trying to ask for the gender breakdown, but the ages start as young as 13. So to put this in perspective, imagine having a 13-year-old girl somewhere in some facility in the country. These kids only get 2 10-minute phone calls a week. So imagine not knowing about your 13-year-old girl more than twice a week for 10 minutes if they can communicate with you. Joy?
Oh, my goodness. Mariana Atencio, thank you so much for the reporting that you're doing. Shocking. And I'm going to ask my team as we go out to break. We're going to be listening to, when we come back, more of this rally. But as we go out to break, if you guys wouldn't mind playing Mariana's interview with a dad who's actually gone through this in McAllen, Texas, who's been separated from his child. We'll play that on the way out to break. Much more AM Joy coming up.
¿Cómo te sentiste? How did you feel when they took him away?
Sí, sufrí mucho.
I suffered a lot, he says. ¿Tenías miedo? Did you fear that you were not going to be reunited with him? ¿Tenías miedo que no te lo iban a entregar?
Sí.
Yes, he says he feared he wasn't going to be reunited with his son.